If you think war only happens on the battlefield, you're wrong. There's a silent war that's far more brutal, where every single number can kill an entire nation. This is the story of the trade war, and how it's changing your future. Part 1, Origin of the War. Why does a trade war happen? In the modern world, where countries are interdependent on each other for economic development, the concept of war is no longer limited to fire and bullets. There is another type of war, quieter, more sophisticated, but no less destructive: trade war. What is a trade war? A trade war occurs when one country imposes trade barriers such as high tariffs, import quotas, or non-tariff controls to exert economic pressure on another country. This often leads to retaliation, causing economic relations between countries to become tense and unstable. But the question is, why do countries do this? When everyone understands that free trade is the foundation for global growth. When national interests collide, the roots of conflict. In fact, trade wars often stem from deep conflicts of interest. Chronic trade deficit. A country like the U.S. may feel it is unfair to continuously trade deficit with a country like China. This creates internal political pressure for the government to take action. Protecting domestic industries. When domestic businesses have to compete with cheap imported goods, governments tend to erect barriers to save manufacturing and jobs. Competition for technology and power. In the digital age, data and technology are strategic resources. Countries compete not only economically but also for control of the future. Intellectual property and subsidy issues. The US and the West often accuse China of stealing technology, or unfairly subsidizing state-owned enterprises, creating global trade imbalances. Trade wars that have shaken the world. Trade wars are not a new phenomenon. History has seen trade tensions escalate into full-blown confrontations on several occasions. Japan, U.S., 1980s. The U.S. was concerned that high-tech goods from Japan would dominate the market. Washington imposed tariffs and pressured Tokyo in many ways to force it to open its market and restrict exports. European Union, China. In recent years, the EU has accused China of dumping steel and solar panels, leading to a series of trade defense measures, and especially, U.S. China, 2018 to 2020, under President Donald Trump. The U.S. launched an unprecedented trade war with China. Hundreds of billions of dollars of goods were taxed, creating a global domino effect. When economics becomes a weapon. An important point to emphasize: tariffs are not just financial tools, they are also political weapons. When a country imposes high tariffs, the goal is not just to make more money from imports, but to create strategic pressure on the other country's economy. Each tariff is a move. And in this game, mistakes are paid for in terms of reduced growth, lost jobs, and a crisis of confidence. But when a war starts, someone always gets hurt. And in a trade war, that person is us, the common people. In the next part, we will explore the terrible consequences of a trade war, and why it can touch every meal, every product, every economic dream of every person. Part 2, Terrible Consequences. WHO pay the price? Trade wars, on the surface, they are a confrontation between economic superpowers. But if you look behind the scenes, you will realize, the real payers are not governments, but people, businesses and the global economy. Rising prices, inflation from taxes. When a country imposes a tariff on imported goods, that cost doesn't disappear, it's passed straight into the pockets of consumers. For example, when the US imposed a 25% tariff on Chinese steel and aluminium, domestic manufacturers were forced to raise their prices to cover the cost of raw materials. As a result, cars are more expensive, air conditioners, refrigerators, and electronic devices increase in price. Consumer goods such as clothing and footwear, which rely heavily on cheap imports, have become less accessible to low-income earners. Ordinary people, who have no voice in policy decisions, become invisible victims in a war they did not choose. Businesses in trouble, global supply chain broken. One of the most dangerous effects of a trade war is the disruption of global supply chains, where businesses in many countries depend on each other to create final products. When one link is taxed, the whole system is affected. U.S. factories lack cheap components from China. Chinese businesses lose orders due to tariffs, leading to job cuts. Multinational companies have to move production lines to third countries, causing huge costs. Many small and medium-sized enterprises, which do not have enough resources to adapt, are forced to close or cut staff. As a result, unemployment rates increase and consumer confidence declines. The story of an American farmer, when the tax bullet shoots back at the family. A typical example of the reverse effect of the trade war is the U.S. agricultural industry. When the U.S. imposed tariffs on Chinese goods, China responded by stopping imports of U.S. agricultural products, especially soybeans, one of its main export items. Millions of tons of soybeans are stuck in states like Iowa and Illinois. Agricultural prices fell sharply. Farmers went bankrupt en masse. The U.S. government had to spend billions of dollars in emergency aid to save farmers from a wave of bankruptcy. A war launched to protect Americans has hurt the most vulnerable Americans. Chain impact on India and developing economies. India, a rising nation of more than 1.4 billion people, is not out of the game. As the two superpowers, the U.S. and China, confront each other, global investment flows. Trade and confidence are shaken. India's exports of textiles, pharmaceuticals, and IT services are struggling as global markets contract. The supporting industry, which supplies multinational corporations, is facing a sharp decline in orders. Inflation, volatile exchange rates, stagnant foreign investment, all create an unpredictable and volatile environment. Countries like India and Vietnam have the opportunity to replace China in the supply chain. But global instability forces them to tread cautiously. Damaged trust, long-term consequences hard to measure. In international trade, trust is the most valuable asset. When countries use tariffs as weapons, they send a signal that the rules of the game can change at any time. Businesses can't plan long-term. Investors pull out. People tighten their spending. And the result is a stagnant global economy, not because of a lack of resources, but because of a lack of confidence. But the trade war is not simply about losses or tariffs on paper. Deep inside is a geopolitical chess game, where the superpowers are playing a silent but brutal game of power. Welcome to Part 3, The Hidden Game of Super Moves. Part 3, The Underground Game, Classy Moves Between Superpowers. The trade war is not simply a tit-for-tat between two economies. Behind the tariffs and seemingly spontaneous tweets lie carefully calculated moves made behind the scenes. It is a game of strategy, ambition, and above all, of power. America, the move to contain and control. The United States, the world's #1 economic superpower, is accustomed to being at the center of the global trading system. But China's rapid rise has made it impossible for Washington to sit idly by. Under President Donald Trump, the U.S. officially abandoned its policy of soft engagement and switched to direct confrontation. Large-scale tax attack. Since 2018, the U.S. has continuously imposed taxes on more than $360 billion of Chinese goods, an unprecedented number. Tech control, Huawei, TikTok, ZTE targets. The U.S. restricts access to advanced technologies like chips, AI, and 5G, restructuring the supply chain, encourage U.S. businesses to withdraw from China and move to countries like India and Vietnam. The U.S. goal is clear: slow China's rise and preserve its superpower status. But that also means creating an economic cold front that could last for decades. China, counterattack with long-term strategy. China will not sit idly by and be ambushed. With Sun Tzu's strategic thinking, Beijing chooses to counterattack intelligently and patiently, rather than react hastily. Retaliatory tariffs. China imposes tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars of U.S. goods, targeting agricultural states, where there is great political influence. Made in China 2025 strategy, promote technology localization. Reduce dependence on the U.S. Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, expanding global influence. Building a trade network to replace the West. Beijing understands that winning a trade war is not about winning each battle, but about controlling the dynamics. China is investing in infrastructure, education, and technology, preparing for the long game. India emoji, India, the middle card being contested. India was not the one who started the war, but it was one of the most important cards on the chessboard. With the world's largest population, low labor costs, a large market, and a strategic location in Asia, India is an ideal destination for businesses looking to escape China. The Modi government launched the Make in India strategy to attract manufacturing investment. U.S.-India relations are warm, especially in defense, technology and the semiconductor supply chain. China is not standing aside, continuing to maintain bilateral trade and invest in infrastructure. India is playing a deft multilateral game, using tensions to enhance its position while avoiding direct confrontation. But does it have the capacity to become a new manufacturing powerhouse? The answer is still being written. Tech wars, semiconductors, AI and data. A key point in modern trade wars is the technology war. Semiconductors, the heart of all electronics, have become a bottleneck. The US is tightening its grip on exports of advanced chips to China. AI, big data, 5G, the technologies of the future, are where both sides are investing hundreds of billions of dollars to gain the upper hand. The tech arms race, it's not just about who creates the technology. It's about who controls global standards, ecosystems, and user data. This is no longer a war of goods, but a race to shape the digital world. And in this race, whoever is one step behind can fall behind a generation. But at the end of the day, what matters is not who wins each move, but where does the world end up after this long war? Are we entering a new era, where trade is no longer a path to cooperation, but a front in confrontation? The final section will give you a glimpse into the future, and your own role in it. Part 4, The Future, What Can You Do in This Fight? Trade wars, it sounds like a high-level affair between governments, giant corporations, and geopolitical superpowers. But in reality, every individual, every one of you watching this video, is a part of that game. The question is no longer, who is taxing whom? But, how will we live in a world that is uncertain, changing, and competitive? A new world is coming, there is no going back. The trade war between the US and China is no longer a one-off. It ushers in a new economic order where protectionism is on the rise, fragmented global supply chains. Each country seeks to become more autonomous, more closed, less trusting of each other. What are the consequences? Items that were once cheap and easy to buy, can now become luxuries. Companies must learn to be more flexible, not dependent on a single source of supply. Workers must constantly upgrade their skills, because today's jobs may disappear tomorrow. Opportunities hidden behind crisis. But don't just see the difficulties. In crisis there is always opportunity, and in trade wars, the smart ones will find room to break through. Small businesses can take advantage of the change to expand into new markets, or serve alternative supply chains. Young people, freelancers, technology experts, can become indispensable factors in the restructuring of the digital economy. Countries like India, Vietnam, Indonesia, if they go in the right direction, will no longer be support factories, but will become the new production and innovation centers of the world. You don't have to be a CEO to play a role in this fight. If you understand the currents, you have an advantage over the millions of people who are clueless. What to do to not be left behind? Here are 3 things you, whoever you are, wherever you are, can do starting today. 1. Upgrade your global economic thinking. Look beyond the headlines. Understand the connections between countries, between politics and trade, between tariffs and jobs. 2. Continuous learning, especially technology and finance. The fastest change will come from technology. Whoever controls technology controls the future. 3. Flexible thinking, ready to change. In times of change, it is not the strongest who survives, but the one who adapts the fastest. Conclusion: you are standing at a crossroads of history. The trade war is not just a war between countries. It is a war between old thinking and new thinking, between virtual stability and a reality that changes every hour, between a closed world and a future full of opportunities if we dare to step out. Do you want to be a victim, or a leader of change? The answer lies in your actions. Right after this video ends. If you find this video useful, leave a comment. Share your perspective on the future of the world economy. And don't forget to like, subscribe the channel so you don't miss the next sharp videos.